It's really not as simple as the geologist putting an X on the map and saying, I want to drill here. Now get me the rights to go do that. But we're going to kind of look at it like that and say, now that the company knows where they want to drill the well, now it's time to obtain the rights to do so. And that's typically done through something called leasing. So this class is going to focus on the role of the landman and give you a sense of the issues that go about with leasing the rights. And along the way, you're going to pick up the vocabulary of leasing and also some of the major clauses that are involved in an oil and gas lease. Thus far, the professionals we've been introduced to in the class have been largely geologists and petroleum engineers. People have underwent a highly technical education to get into their business. The landman is another major career track for people to work in the oil and gas industry. This is more of a business side. And I think, honestly, from my experience talking with independent oil and gas men, they tend to either be geologists, petroleum engineers, landmen, accountants, or lawyers. So the landman represents a career entry for many people, particularly those that are interested in, that have a business background, I should say. There is the American Association of Petroleum Landmen, AAPL. It's headquartered down in Fort Worth, and we actually work, as I put this program together, I've worked some with them, and we attend one of their major events, which is called the NAPE Summit, which is the North American Production Expo, in the spring of each year. So a very important and active organization that represent the landman career field. On the screen, you're going to see a URL to a link. It's kind of a funny computer-based video of sorts, but it's a great training video that talks about the role of the landman and, more importantly, the issues that landmen deal with, and beyond just the fact that landmen deal with them, the issues that have to be dealt with when it comes to obtaining an oil and gas lease and then operating on that lease. But let's take a step back and look at who owns the land in the United States. After you've watched that video, it's going to be very clear that you can sever the surface rights from the mineral rights. And so it's not just a matter of who has the surface rights, it's really a matter of who has the mineral rights. Now, the U.S. government retains, for the most part, mineral rights for its surface rights. And you can see from this chart, all those various colored in areas on the map are federal lands of some sort. It may be that they're Native American lands, Bureau of Land Management, Department of Defense, but they're federal lands. You can see in Texas there aren't very many, but if you look over into the Permian Basin in New Mexico, you see that there are in fact some federal lands up in, as you get up into Colorado, where there is some oil production, and up further north, there are some federal lands to be considered. But even within Texas, that doesn't mean that it's all private land. For example, and I don't know the history on this, well, there are a lot of universities, well, specifically University of Texas, and I believe A&M too, but I know for a fact the University of Texas has land that was given to them when the state was founded, or they acquired the rights somehow, and they have the mineral rights. And so UT, in fact, is getting money due to oil and gas production. The little red checks you see on this map are some current sections of land that belong, or where the mineral rights are leased, available be leased by the University of Texas. And you can see, looking at the map, that some of those are in the heart of the envelope in terms of activity in the Permian Basin. We talked about the fact that for the most part in the United States, the individual owns the rights. Now we've looked onshore at the federal government. What about offshore? Well, for most states out to 3 nautical miles, the state controls the leasing. For Texas and the western coast of Florida, it's out to 9 nautical miles. I can't explain to you the difference, that's just the law. And then out to 200 nautical miles is considered U.S. land. And obviously the Gulf of Mexico, there is a lot of active drilling, and then you hear periodically the notion of drilling off of both the east and the west coast. Incidentally, where does that money go to? The royalty money that comes from that? Into the federal treasury. Onshore, BLM handles the leasing of federal land. Both the BLM and the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management are subsidiaries or departments of the Department of Interior. So within the BLM, they handle the leasing of lands that are in the public lands and the national forest lands, and they're generally open. The parks and the wildlife areas are typically not open to oil and gas drilling. Native American lands, there actually is, they use this term, they call them Indian lands. If you look on the charts, that's how they're referred to, as Indians. The tribes retain leasing rights over their tribal properties. And I've already talked about the BOEM handles the offshore stuff. Within the states, though, there are state-held lands. Texas doesn't have a tremendous amount of land, but for example, the General Land Office handles the leasing of those University of Texas lands I talked about earlier. I think I mentioned before that my brother-in-law is currently the land commissioner of New Mexico, and you can see they have almost as many subsurface acres in New Mexico as does Texas as a whole. And I can tell you that the state trust lands and the revenues from drilling activities is a big part of the New Mexico state annual budget. So these are big income generators. For whatever reason, not that much acreage in Oklahoma. So we've talked about who owns the land. In the next video, we're going to segue and start introducing you to the concept of leasing and why things are the way they are.